You know, when we set out to find a speaker for tonight's gala, we were looking for a familiar face, someone who knows technology, and somebody that could give us advice that we could really use.
And I think we found him. Wes Moss made a name for himself on the second season of The Apprentice with Donald Trump on NBC. Wes is a certified financial planner, chief investment strategist at Georgia's largest fee-only investment firm, Capital Investment Advisors. He hosts a call-in show, Money Matters, on WSB Radio, where he talks about investments and personal finance. As we mentioned before, he's an author. His new book, You Can Retire Sooner Than You Think, is at the heart of his keynote address tonight.
And many of you will recognize him from 11 Alive's weekly technology program, Atlanta Tech Edge, which he is the host. Some of you in this audience have even been his guests. Here's a look at some of the highlights of the show featuring some of you.
Faster. That's the most popular word when it comes to the internet. And one local startup called Rigger is growing at record speed because of their ability to make websites, well, faster. But have you heard of augmented reality? It's the technology used to enhance objects in the real world by imposing a virtual image over it. Atlanta-based Merlin Mobility is on the forefront of this technology, and their CEO, Margaret Martin, joins us with more. Margaret, thank you for being with us. Catapult, they're helping companies go mobile and using software to help solve complex problems by making sure employees have all the information they need whenever they need it, wherever they need it. CEO George Machini joins us now with more. Thanks to the Georgia Partnership for Telehealth, more and more people living in these rural areas are getting the health care they need. Paula Guy is the CEO and joins us now with more. Paula, thanks for being with us. And that's why TechBridge has chosen this mission to help other nonprofits with those tools and resources and relationships that they need to further their mission.
So tonight, we're going to hear about two subjects near and dear to many of us: technology and our financial future.
Please welcome Wes Moss.
Gentlemen, thank you. What an intro, my God. Thank you. That's so embarrassing, by the way, to see yourself on stage. So I have, as I was introduced, my TV experience was really being on a reality television show. So that was Donald. You remember The Apprentice from like it was literally a decade ago. So I was on this reality television show, and for some reason they thought I could host Atlanta Tech Edge. So that was my resume, and as you can tell, some of the scenes there. Can you guys see some of the scenes there? As a guy wearing makeup, it's a lot to look at yourself and you're thinking, my God, I look like a drag queen on screen. Now, they've toned some of that down over the years because we have this funny green screen in the back, so it's hard to really get that right. So the first couple of months, it was a lot of touch and go to make that show work. But we have so many great guests in the audience today that have been on Atlanta Tech Edge. How many hands here? I would say probably a dozen people here. Hands here? Yeah, we've had probably 15 people in this room. So that's a big part of making Atlanta Tech Edge wonderful. And it's been a great show for Atlanta, and I've had a lot of fun and really kind of honored to be the host of Atlanta Tech Edge. So that's been a lot of fun. And I guess I would say that every winner up here tonight is really so thankful for being part of ATP. I'm the same way. I mean, it's an honor to be able to come speak to this group. So thank you for that, and thank you for having me here tonight. So with that, let me try to tie in what I do here in this book. This is funny. They announced earlier the title of my book, You Can Retire Sooner Than You Think. I heard a lot of laughter with that. Did you guys? I heard people kind of chuckle just for the name of the book. But here's how I tie this in. I run a traditional investment management firm, wealth management firm. I also have a technology company called Wella Strategies that's in Atlanta Tech Village, and we are a financial technology firm. And that has been my foray into technology here in Atlanta. What this book is all about is trying to tie money and happiness together. And I think about the guests that I have on Tech Edge, and I think about all the entrepreneurs that I've talked to, and I think about that they are doing that for what? I think number one, and we all know this here, these entrepreneurs are sticking their necks out just for the love of of the thought of the business opportunity, the idea that they have. Okay. So we've got this group of individuals that we're all trying to. If we're entrepreneurs, we might be thinking that we're going to have a big exit, we're going to have some big moment, and we're not really worried about money today. So we have entrepreneurs that are thinking that maybe at some point I'm going to be able to just cash out, I'm going to exit. And then we have, and those are for people that own technology companies. And that is, in America, we are celebrated for those huge upside events, right? So it's like this Mark Zuckerberg effect, where you see a kid who started a website in his dorm room about rating whether girls are, I think it was hot, it's literally hot or not, right? And now it was hot or not, and then that turned into Facebook, and now that guy's a billionaire. But those paths are really very much like the lottery to some extent. It's not that they don't happen, but for most people don't have a technology firm that they own that gets sold for $500 million or goes IPO for $1 billion. It's that most of us in this room are just trying to get to a point where the money side of the equation, whether we're working or we have our own company, we can feel comfortable about it. And that's what this book is really all about. I started out and I looked, here's how I'm going to tie this together to every single person in this room, including the people at my table, is that the fear of not having money is a very powerful motivator. And I go back and I looked at this morning. In my little memo box, I keep my first Father's Day card. I have three kids. I have my first Father's Day card and my wedding ring, my watch. And every morning I open it up and I put my watch on. And I keep a movie ticket in that box. And I looked at it this morning just so I could remember the exact date. It was January 31st, or it was December 31st, 2006. And the movie ticket stub that I look at every single day and I don't know if it's too big of an audience to guess here. It's the Will Smith movie, The Pursuit of Happiness. Does everybody remember that movie? Everybody here has seen that movie. It's a movie about a guy who was good at his job, but he was working for a company the technology was becoming irrelevant. And even though he was doing his job, but he was selling, he ended up, the company went out of business. So he didn't get 2 months worth of commission checks. And this is a single dad. And he ended up homeless, very simply. And that's what this movie is about, is this smart individual becoming homeless and sleeping in a subway bathroom with his child, holding the door shut so that he could get a night's sleep with his 5-year-old boy. So if you have kids in this room, that hits home to you. And if you have ever been in a situation where you're worried about your company not making it, which I know that almost every single entrepreneur here has thought about, that we have this fear of not having enough money. And I've always really been, and whether we're an entrepreneur or not, we've all gone through that period of time. Think about how much consolidation, think about how many things happen in telecom, and think about how many layoffs there have been in this town. As great of a town this is, our economy goes through these huge cycles, so we very often face economic uncertainty in our lives. And as a financial advisor and investment management, and having an investment management firm, it's a huge part of what I've always thought about is that what is that relationship between money and happiness? And how much do we have to have at some point before we feel good and we feel safe and we don't have that same fear anymore? There was a study done back about 3 or 4 years ago from Princeton that talked about, that wanted to get to the heart of how much money does it take to be happy? How much money per year does it take in income? The number was $75,000 a year. And I remember hearing Dave Ramsey on the radio talk about you've got to make this amount of money before you're happy in America. And that really struck a chord with me. So I thought, why don't I try to take that study much further? And that's the genesis of this. Really, this is a research project that unfolded over about 2 years that really became that's the content of this book. So what I set out to do is find this relationship. Does money buy happiness? And if it does, what is that level? So I did a survey through SurveyMonkey. So that's a company that's run by Sheryl Sandberg's husband in California, where I was able to gather 46 different states, 1,350 respondents. I had 56,000 points of data in my survey that came back that asked questions about financial questions, obviously we'll get to just tonight. Questions about consumer behavior, so where do I shop, what do I buy, what kind of car do I have? Life questions about how many kids do I have, where do I live, where do I eat out at night? And then I was able to take the happiest 2 quintiles and the least happy 2 quintiles. So I also asked a series of happiness questions, and then compare those two. And in this book, that's what this research is all about. Is I wanted to know if somebody is 55 to 65 years old. This is a young room, by the way. So a lot of times I do these talks for people who are on the verge of retirement. This doesn't look like a room on the verge of retirement. I mean, this is a much younger audience here, much better looking audience than I usually speak with. It's a very good looking audience. So keep laughing. So the relationships here I found in this book are pretty, in my opinion, a lot of them are common sense, but the other things are a little bit surprising or a lot surprising. So that's a little bit of what I'll show you here today. Let's go ahead and go to the first slide here. So this is part of what I found, is that to some extent, money does buy happiness. But when we get to a certain point, it starts to level off, all right? So think of it this way, and this is just a general relationship of what I found here in this book, is that, and let's think about it from an income perspective. If I go from $30,000 in income to $100,000 in income, that's a really big jump for me in my life and what I can afford. And now I have this new level of comfort, and I may be less scared, going back to that fear of not having enough money. So part of this, is it happiness, or is it just not having the fear of ever running out again? That's what this relationship is. But then let's say another example, an extreme here, let's say you make $1 million a year. And now let's say you go up another $500,000, you're making $1.5 million a year. Does that really impact what you could do in the world? It doesn't. So you get this relationship where, and this is part of what that original Princeton study I think was getting at, is you get to a certain point, there's a lot of happiness or comfort that happens in the early stages of either earning more of a living or accumulating more wealth that are able to have some sort of financial cushion. So this relationship here, which is what I call kind of, this is really a plateau effect in the book, is that as I'm earning more income and more, I have a lot of marginal happiness early on, and then it starts to level off. So it's diminishing marginal happiness. And that's the relationship that I found a lot through this book. So kind of an overarching question is money buy happiness? The answer, I believe here, is yes, but only to a point. And that's a lot of what I learned here in this book. These are some of the anecdotal questions that I was able to compare, happy group versus unhappy group. So the number of core pursuits. So the number of, these are hobbies on steroids that people love so much to do. They're ready to stop working, not because they necessarily hate their jobs, but because they're ready to go do something else. And then the money side of this is it affords them at some point to be able to do so. So these are, so number of core pursuits, the number of vacations, so this one, I'll talk about that in a second, time spent for retirement planning, the number of children, that's, believe it or not, there's a relationship there between happy group and unhappy group. That's what this book is about. Liquid net worth, and then time to pay off a mortgage. Let's take a look at this. So these are the core pursuits, and this is something that was interesting to me. I asked people to list not only what they did as their core pursuits or their favorite things to do, hobbies on steroids. Also, I asked how many different core pursuits do you have? Happy retirees have, on average, more than 3, or about 3 core pursuits on average. Or close to, let's call it almost 4 if we're going to round up. It's 3.6. So almost 4 core pursuits, things that they love to do in the world. Let's say golf is an example for guys. If you think about it, if you're a golfer, you don't just golf once in a while, right? You kind of want to golf all the time. If you're a golfer, you don't want to just do it twice a year. You want to do it once a week. So it's something you get really engaged in. The number one answer here, by the way, the happiest retirees' number one hobby was volunteering. So if once you get to a point and you have enough money, volunteering brings so much to this happy group. And again, none of this was my idea. This is just reported back to me in a survey, And this is how I came up with this. Look at the unhappy retiree side, though. This unhappy group just has a lot less core pursuits. So the average unhappy retiree ended up, or on average, had less than 2 core pursuits in the world. Let's continue on here. Number of vacations per year. Part of this has to do with the happier group having slightly more net worth. Not dramatically more net worth, but more net worth versus the unhappy group. Now, as I started to get back some of these answers, happy people take more vacations than unhappy people? Is this real? I mean, this is real data. So yeah, so 2.4 vacations for the happy group, 1.4 for the unhappy group. And it made me wonder, is my data, can I really verify this data? So it's almost too good to some extent. Well, so I said, I'm going to get asked, like, where did you, I'm not a mathematician, so I didn't know how to, I guess, do the statistical side of the analysis. So I went to Georgia Tech. And there's a lot of Georgia Tech in the room, isn't there? How many Tech? It's a lot. And I will tell you, it's a lot of people on Atlanta Tech Edge. A lot of Georgia Tech alums, so thank you for that. So I figured I'm going to go to Georgia Tech, and I'm going to find somebody in the math department to verify this data. So I emailed like 20 professors. Nobody emailed me back. I got an email back from the president of the math club at Georgia Tech. So I went down and met with the math club. It's a ruckus of a group, let me tell you. It's a very fun group. I'm just kidding, I didn't know. But I did find the president of the math club, and one of her professors, Jeffrey Geronimo, actually went in and did the statistical analysis to say whether this is, what's the confidence between these two groups? And so what I published in the book, it's anywhere from 95 to 99% confidence that there's a statistically significant difference between the unhappy and happy group, even when it comes to the number of vacations they take. So this is real data. Let's keep going here. I look at the data from a net worth perspective, so an average net worth, and then I also looked at it from a median perspective. The reason I'm showing median here is I wanted to figure out, is there an inflection point? So in America, if we don't end up like Mark Zuckerberg and we don't have a big exit and we're working for a great company and we just have to save every year, like most Americans, what are those levels we need to get to? Nobody ever really talks about what's the level to get to. You always hear from Wall Street, by the way, you always hear the answer is more. So how much you need to save? You need to save more, right? You need $1 million, but $1 million isn't what it used to be, so you need $2 million. Remember the ING commercials with the orange number of people carrying around 1.3 million, 1.6 million? Remember that? If you go to a Wall Street firm, or you go to most of the financial planning community, the easy answer for you when it comes to when can I stop working is that you just need more money. And when can I stop? The answer is typically no. You can't stop anytime too soon. I had a lady come into my office, this is about 2 months ago. I looked through all of her finances. She had a pension, she had Social Security, she had, let's say, plenty of money saved, and she could literally have retired a year or two ago. I said, you could retire 2 years ago. And she said, well, I just came from another financial advisor that told me I needed to work, and she's 65, until I was 70. And I said, well, I don't understand why are you being told that? And that's why I really started thinking about the answer for Wall Street is more, because most of Wall Street is just in the asset management business, and they want to collect more assets to manage. And if you're a financial advisor, it's a pretty easy out to say, well, how can I never run out of money, which is the fear we all have, going back to that Will Smith movie? The answer is just to work. Just keep working until you die. And I think that's what the message a lot of people get in America. You just have to keep going. And that's really not the case. What is a bare minimum benchmark in America to be able to retire? $500,000 in savings. A lot lower than I would have thought. Number of years to pay off a mortgage. This is another really important point here. Again, this is a young group, so I don't know how many. Yeah, I doubt there's that many people here thinking, when am I going to get my mortgage paid off, right? You think that's a long way out before you. I see some smiles here, but wouldn't it be nice to get rid of a mortgage? So I find the happy group here, so if you look at these colors, blue is the least happy group. These are miserable people. As you keep going, you have, and I always wonder, and I think about this survey, I think, who's checking the box? You know, on a scale of 1 to 5, I'm the least happy. I'm thinking, what person is doing that? But thank goodness there's plenty of data for me to share. Slightly happy was next in the gray. moderately happy in the red. But you see here this relationship, as each step gets happier and happier and happier, the number of years to pay off mortgage goes down and down and down and down. It's a very real relationship. It just means that I'm having more and more, the closer I get to the light at the end of the tunnel of not writing a check to Wells Fargo or Bank of America every month for $2,500 or $3,000, whatever it is. Some of the people in the room here, maybe, I was going to say, 20 grand a month. I don't know, maybe we've had some big technology exits in the room. Those people might even they may not even have mortgages. But my point here is that getting rid of this debt is it's a big part of having financial comfort. And I find happy retirees, once they get to the point they can retire, they just don't have a mortgage or the mortgage payoff is within sight. Let's keep going here. Again, this is also meant to show somewhat of a plateauing relationship where current income, we do have higher levels of happiness from my research as I end up making more and more income. But again, as we get to that my number's a little higher than the Princeton study, but the $80,000, $85,000 number, it starts to really level off. The number of income sources is an interesting number. In financial planning, you rarely talk about the number of different ways you get income. So Social Security, pension, rental income, other kinds of benefits. And then, of course, your investment income from all that money, that $500,000 that we all need to save to get to that safe point or happy point. But the number of ways we generate income in the future also gives us this peace of mind that if something happens to one of them, I feel it's not going to ruin my retirement picture. So imagine your retirement income is $5,000 a month. Would you rather get one check for $5,000 or five $1,000 checks? The answer is I'd rather have multiple sources of my income, so if one of them goes away, I still can do the things I want to do. So I go back to this, and this today I think about the market, the stock market in the last 1 month, and you think about the cover of, I was walking out of WXIA today. I just filmed Atlanta Tech Edge as I came here, so there's an excuse that I have makeup on. I don't look like a drag queen like I used to in the earlier shows. But the cover of USA Today was just this big red line of the stock market going down. And the headline was Ebola and global growth slowdown. That's the cover of USA Today. Over 1 million people see that cover every single day. And that is the key reason, and it's the media's fault, and I'm part of that problem on WSB radio, but I can just tell you that part of so much of the media is for shock value and for entertainment and to keep people a little bit on edge. Why else do you have this big red Dow Jones going down and the first big word you see is Ebola? Guess what? The stock market's down 10% in the last 3 weeks. It's a very big number on a $17 trillion economy. And it's a scary number for most people. And I'll be interested in this room. And as we wrap up, how many people here were nervous or are nervous about the current stock market meltdown? No one at all. Good. Okay. Good. So me neither. So maybe we're fine. And really the answer is you shouldn't be. The answer is you really shouldn't be. Because at your age here in this room, in your 20s, I see 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. Again, I don't know, I've heard some laughter here. Maybe there's some 60s, I don't know. But you don't want the stock market to do well right now. You'd rather it be one disaster after another, after another, after another. Because you've got 20 and 30 years before you need your money. So that's the investment side of this. And this slide is really more for an investment talk, but the takeaway here very simply and quickly is this. Look at the third red line. That's the stock market, the S&P 500. This is from 1993 to 2012. So I wanted to leave out 2013 which is a 30% up year on the U.S. stock market. So I leave that out. So even through the calamity that we lived through the tech bubble, absolute crash, where the S&P, the general market itself, went down 45%, and the 2007-8 Great Recession, where the stock market went down almost 50%, even through those two periods of time, the market averaged per year over 8%, on average per year for 20 years. So Wella Strategies, W-E-L-A. So Wella is all about financial education for millennials. So our target is 25 to 45. And does the 25-year-old have, is that a big investor? No, it's not. But it's a group that if they're educated over the next 10 years and the next 20 years, and I don't plan on being out of the business anytime soon, that's a group that'll be a huge, huge part of our economy and investors in America. And the more education that we can give that group, the more likely that we can avoid that very chart. And we can end up avoiding being the investor that gets 2% a year when inflation is about the same and the market itself does over 8%. So I try to bring all this back here, and I guess my thought here is that we all have that same motivation. That we're all motivated when it comes to money. We're all motivated out of, to some extent, fear, so that we just have enough to survive and at some point be able to stop and be comfortable and do all the other things that we want to do. For some of you, it's keep working, do it in another company or a third company or a fourth company. The more anecdotal things I find here that, and if I had to sum this up, I think I typically say you want to save more so that you can spend more. My research shows that you've got to have more children. So the happy group, the happy retirees have 2.6 children on average. The unhappy group has a half a child, according to my research. And so I already have 3 kids too, by the way. And my wife and I are in that conversation about having a fourth. So I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So we keep having that conversation. Are we going to have, do we have one more kid? And as I went through this research this past year, I'm thinking, look, we've already hit this diminishing marginal happiness for having children. So we're already at 3. The answer is we don't need to have a fourth. At least that was my anecdotal argument to this. So there's also, and I'm wrapping this up, I know, there's also interesting data about how we drive, what we drive. So the number 1 happy retiree car, does anyone know what that is? Anyone want to give a guess? Number 1 happy retiree car? Number 1 luxury happy retiree car. What's that, a Buick? A Buick? Why is that? That's supposed to be a good car. Come on now. That's a good car. A Buick was actually number 2 on the list. I don't even know if you can call that luxury, but Tiger Woods will call it luxury, right? Depends on who advertises it. Number 1 happy retiree car, luxury, is a Lexus, interestingly enough. There's an Asian car tilt to the happy retirees in general, just beyond luxury. How about on the unhappy side, by the way? What's the number 1 unhappy retiree car? A smart car? Was it? It's not a Tesla. No, number 1 unhappy retiree car, luxury car in America is a BMW. And you have time to sell the BMW. It's okay. And again, remember, nobody here is retired. So you can drive a BMW all you want until you get to retirement, then you get to buy a Lexus. So, by the way, Lexus picked that, or BMW picked that part of my research up, and BMW USA wrote on their blog about that. And the comments about me and my research were so mean. And they were so mean to anyone that drives a Lexus, as if I'm endorsing Lexus. They're not on the wall. I've got no sponsorship from them. So I guess, so some of the book that we're effectively, I know there's a big group that'll be in there later tonight we're just giving out the book. So I think we have 100 books to give out. And then if you don't get a book, you still want a book, obviously you can just go to Amazon or my website, you can find the book. But what I have learned here, and if we can take away tonight, is that we're all motivated by the same thing. We're either we're there for the love of the game, but we're also there so that we can have some sort of freedom economically, that we can step away when we want to. And with that, hopefully that will help you make some family decisions. Whether you have 2 kids or 3 or 4 tonight, I can see the fight with your spouse when you go home after a couple drinks. We're done. We're done with kids. And if it helps you, if anything, on your next car purchase, hopefully there'll be something there. And with that, I appreciate being here, and I hope that this community still continues to support Atlanta Tech Edge on 11 Alive and NBC, because we have had such a fun about year and a half on Tech Edge, and a lot of that is because of everyone here. So thank you for that. And by the way, does anybody listen to WSB Radio, by the way? Thank you. And that's my other job on Sunday morning. So I have a tough Sunday. I've got WSB, I've got Atlanta Tech Edge, but thank you for your support in that. I hope to be able to talk to you a little bit tonight and give you a book, and have a great, fun rest of ATP. Good night.